Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to part 2 of my build guide for the Dark Impact on the DF03 chassis. And this is where we got to last time. So we managed to get all of the rear gearbox assembly and motor assembly together. Doesn't look like much, but quite a lot of work involved there. And we're going to get on now with steps 9, 10, 11 and 12. At the end of step 12 we should end up with this part with the rear damper stay or shock tower on, and the top and lower wishbones, drive shafts and the wheel carriers, and the rear axles all assembled. So let's get on with it. I'm not going to do it all in the order as it's shown here, but we'll get there in the end, as you'll see. So I think the first thing we're going to do is get the lower wishbones sorted. Here's one of the lower wishbones, which is a part E1. As you can see, I've already put in the 5mm ball joint in that inner of the 3 holes. It's one of these with the thread on, so you just put that in there. And then what we're going to do is fit on the rear axle or the rear axle carrier. So you need this part, which is a D4, and again I've put one of those same 5mm ball joints in the centre of the 3 holes. And strangely, for a Tamiya kit, what we need to do, as it shows in this diagram here, is to get a 2.5mm drill, and we need to drill out, hope you can see that, through this hole here that's partly formed, but you have to drill all the way through. So yeah, get your 2.5mm drill and drill through that. And then what you need to do is get your 3mm tiny little grub screw, and I recommend putting that in first and just getting that in place. So don't screw it all the way in, because you've got to put the shaft through there in a minute. So just get that ready. Then what you want is this MS4, which is a 3x31mm shaft with a flat in it, and that's going to be secured in here on the flat with that little grub screw. So you need to put the flat pointing towards the grub screw as you push it through. So again, push that in and tighten up the grub screw. Don't over tighten it though, else you will strip the thread. So obviously what you need to do is do that one and one exactly the same but opposite for the other side. Next thing I'm going to do is get this part of B3, which is your rear damper stay or shock tower, and again you need to put one of those 5mm ball ends into the centre of the 3 holes there, and at the bottom you've got part MD5, which is another ball joint, and you need to secure that in the bottom hole there on both sides with a 10mm screw. What you also need to do for the rear damper stay is to attach these parts, which is M1, 2 of these, they go on like so, and again a 10mm screw holds them on from this side, so put 2 of those on. Okay, having said all that, you might have seen if you watch part 1 that I'm going to use some Yeah Racing aluminium parts. So having shown you these pieces, I'm now going to be substituting those for the aluminium counterparts. So this is your damper stay or rear shock tower. I've already got those mounts on that are for the rear wing. Again, exactly the same. We've got those 5mm balls in the centre of the holes on each side and at the bottom there. And to replace these lower arms, I've got the aluminium version, and they are exactly the same. As you can see, they fit exactly the same. So the ball joints are in the same place, and you've got your axle carrier or your rear hub held on in a similar way. So I'm going to swap those out, but it'll be exactly the same for these parts when I put it all together. You just need to get your 1150 bearing and push it into the carrier, and then get your wheel axle and poke that through, and that's ready to go on. But I'll just do the same and push that through into my aluminium one. I've put the bearing again on the outside, the 1150, and just hold this together now so it doesn't fall out. I'm going to put an R clip through the hole just to keep it all together. I'm just going to fit this lower arm to the rear assembly using this bar, which is an MS6 48.5mm long bar. As you can see, I've already put the E-clip on this end of the bar. I recommend you do that first, get one end on. We'll push it through and put the other E-clip on the end to hold it all together in a sec. Push the bar through. Okay, so that's one side done. So we'll just get on and do the other side exactly in the same way. Okay, so that's both lower arms fitted. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do now is get these two rear top arms, which are adjustable. So you're going to need your threaded bar, which is 50mm long, and the adjustable ball end. And you need to screw a ball end onto each end and tighten them up until they match up with the diagram. And just make sure that you copy the orientation. You've got one with the ball going down and then pointing up, and the other one with the ball end pointing down and the other cup facing towards you. Just match them up on the diagram. So those are the top arms. Once you've got those done, get your rear damper stay. This is the one that comes with the kit if you're going to use that, but I say they're exactly the same. I'm going to put this aluminium one on, and it goes on to those 4 mounting holes there with 4 10mm screws. And again, I'm using my own stainless steel socket heads, or Allen screws, or Allen bolts, whatever you want to call them. But obviously the kit supplied screws are fine, like so. And then get the top arms, and then we need to clip them onto these ball joints at the bottom. So yeah, clip that one on, make sure that the hole in the ball joint is pointing downwards, and the same on the other side. It's simply a matter of getting 2 drive shafts. You've got 4 in the kit obviously, and they're all exactly the same, so just pop those into the cups. And then pop on that top suspension arm. And that's step 9, 10, 11 and 12 complete. So step 13 is attaching the rear unit you've just built to the main chassis tub. So what you're going to need for this is 2 10mm screws, 3x10s, and then you need 4 of the countersunk 12mm screws. These are self-tappers. Be careful with these because there are some 10mm ones and they're very similar, so make sure you get the slightly longer ones. Again, match them up with the diagram on the left if you're not sure. So we just basically locate those lugs into this piece, and you've got those 4 countersunks going here, and the 2 10mm screws going here. So once you've got those 2 screws in the top there and the 4 in the bottom, we can put the chassis out the way for a minute, because now we're going to move on to the front differential, which again is a ball diff. Okay, as I said before, the best thing to do is get all your parts lined up with the instructions on the left which show you the pieces. Make sure you get everything the right size. Get that ready before we start. So you need all those metal parts there, and you need the kind of bevel gear that's got the 10 holes in it to take the balls. You need your 2x25 cap screw that's going to go through the middle, hold it all together. You need that tiny part off parts tree D, so this is D5, and that's going to have that tiny little 2mm nylock nut. Oops, I've dropped it. It's quite easy to do, make sure you don't lose that. I'm going to pop it in here ready. So we just pop that into that part D5. It should sit in there quite neatly. So that's ready to go. Okay, so we've got these the diff plates, which are MK6. We had to glue those on to the output drives on the rear diff, but not on this one. So you just place them onto what it calls the diff joints, I call them the output drives or the output cups, but anyway, doesn't really matter. I've stuck a tiny little bit of AW grease on these just so that the plates don't fall off while I'm trying to assemble the diff. It seems to be okay. Well, I wouldn't put loads on though, but there's a little bit so they're not falling off, so they're ready to go. First thing we need to do then is get our diff grease. Make sure it's the diff grease because any other grease just won't do the job. Again, just fill these holes with the grease and they will hold the balls in place while we fit it together. Plus the balls need lubricating anyway, so it does 2 jobs in one. If you do it like this, you get the 10 balls. As I said, you only get 10, so make sure you don't lose one, else that's going to be a real pain. Got a magnetised screwdriver here, so you can just pick those up and pop them in the holes. So we're going to get ready to put the 2 halves together now, so I'm going to put that down. I'm going to put, it doesn't say to do this, I'm going to put some more ceramic grease on these plates. Don't think you can have too much grease. Okay, and I'm going to build it the same way up as it's aligned in the diagram, so the short joint at the bottom, then we've got to get the gear with the balls in it, that needs now to point down. And we've got to put that bearing, the 850 bearing, onto that side of the gear, like that. Pop the other 850 bearing into that recess and push the 2 halves together. Okay. And again, just give it a twist. You can feel that's quite smooth, so the balls are running nicely on the diff plates. I can feel that, so I think that's a success. Now comes the tricky part, so hope that doesn't fall over. Now we've got to get this 2x25 cap screw. We've got to put on that caged bearing. It's called a thrust bearing, which is this one. You can tell it because it's got a tiny little brass centre, if you can see on the camera, but you'll see it if you've got one. We'll put that over a cap screw, and I'm just going to squeeze a bit of grease onto this bearing. I'm going to use ordinary grease for this and not the diff grease. Okay, like I say, now for the tricky bit. So this has got to go in from underneath or from the shorter of the output drives, and you just want to push that in with your Allen key, whatever kind of Allen key you're using. Alright, and try and hold this steady. This is, like I say, this is the tricky bit. Now we've got a drop in MK9, which is the small spring, which is going to provide the tension to the diff itself. So just drop that in, and then D5 with the lock nut in it. That's got to drop in, and the little arms on this piece will sit in the slots either side of the output cup. Okay, so now what we've got to do is to try and push this down so we can get the end of that cap screw to start to engage with the thread in the nut. So right, I think last time I used this, which is a file. Anything will do as long as it fits down. You need to push that spring down and try and get the thread started. Once you've got it started, you don't need to apply any pressure onto the nut. I think, yeah, that's now engaged, so what I can do is just hold this end and start to tighten up the cap screw. Now it doesn't mention anywhere here about tensioning this diff, but I'm going to assume, because there's nothing else that I can see, that it's going to be the same as the rear diff. So what we need to do is hold either side, or either of these, both of these I should say, output shafts or diff joints, hold them still and tighten that up that cap screw bit by bit until the centre gear will not turn. So we need to get something slotted in to hold this. So if I hold these still, see if I can turn the centre. It's quite hard to turn, but I can actually turn it. So I'm going to tighten up that cap screw a little bit more. Yep, I can still turn it just about. Try another quarter turn, and we'll just keep going like that until I can't turn the centre gear. Okay, so that's it. I can't turn that now. Even with a lot of force, it's turning very slightly, but that's a lot of force. So I'm going to leave it at that, and fingers crossed that was the right thing to do. So to finish this step, what we need to do now is get the super slim 1/2 mm shims, like so, and one goes on each side with a 1510 bearing. So one on there, same again on the other side. This is where you need your diff sponges. We already cut the one in half when we did the rear diff. So what we need to do again, get the right way round, and this side only has one of those sponges. Just poke it in, and the other side has the 1.5. So there we go, that's the end of step 14. Okay, so now the front differentials built up, we're going to use that to go to step 15 and complete the front gearbox assembly. So again, got all the parts laid out. First thing I want to get is this part, which is MK2, which is the bevel shaft. It's a steel part, and I'm going to fit on part D3, and for that we need this MB4, which is the little black grub screw. So we'll put that in there, get the grub screw, make sure that goes into the metal shaft, and then tighten that up. Once that's on, we then need the two 1050 bearings. So they go on like so. Then we need the MK5 shim. That's going to go up against those bearings, and I think that is to protect them against the E-clip we've got to put on there, which is a 4mm E-clip. Let's get my little pliers and pop that on, like so. Then you need a little 2x10 shaft which goes through the hole, and then the MH1 bevel gear. Locate that onto that tiny shaft, and then you've got this tiny little 630 ball bearing that just sits on the end of the shaft there, like so. Okay, with that done, you get part A2, and this needs to sit in there. The bearings are going to locate here, one either side of that kind of rib that's in the part. It just sits in there, and then get your differential, just pop that into place, make sure it's meshing up okay. Yep. And we're going to get some grease on these mating parts of the gears here, and then we need part A5, which is just going to sit on the top there and hold it all together. And as I did with the rear gearbox assembly, I'm going to put some AW grease on here just to seal it up, make sure no dust and dirt gets in. Okay, so that's everything greased up, so just going to pop that on, and then it shows fitting these I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 10mm long 3mm screws. It shows here that 3 of them are self tappers and 3 of them are machine screws, but I'm going to put in, like you've seen on the other sections, where I've put in these stainless steel cap screws, and although they're not self-tappers, they'll do a good job anyway, replacing those self-tapping screws. So there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'm just going to do those up and that will be step 15 complete. Okay then, I think we'll call it a day for now. I was going to try and keep these videos as short as possible, kind of bite-sized, but I think I just got a bit carried away. So I'm going to call it a halt for this part 2 now. I'm really pleased with the way this buggy's coming together. It's got a really nice premium feel to it, which is added to by these lovely aluminium parts. Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting the rest of it together and finally getting and giving it a first run. Anyway, as always, thanks again for watching and I hope you join me on the next one. Bye.